Hey folks, welcome to Black Gumbo. Let's make some sauerkraut. Fermentation is a great way to preserve food, and I've got these cabbages here, and I'm going to make sauerkraut. It's a natural lacto-ferment process by which you add salt to the cabbage and let that salt draw out the moisture that's naturally in the cabbage. We're not making a traditional pour over brine. We're letting the cabbage make its own brine. The way a lacto-ferment works is the lactobacillus, which is the bacteria, the good bacteria that you want, works on the food and starts to break it down and literally preserves the food. It causes it to have that nice peppy fizz, that good fermented flavor. This is different than pickling in vinegar. Fermentation is just so much better. Not only that, but it's a probiotic. And so the process of putting the salt on the cabbage draws out that liquid to make its own brine. The salt's role is to suppress the growth of harmful bacteria, but the lactobacillus has enough oomph in it. It's hardy enough where it can survive in that 2 or 3% brine solution. And so that's what we're going to do today. I'll show you how to do it. It's really easy. I've got a batch already made so we can see it from start to finish, and I'll show you the process. So the first step you want to do is weigh your cabbages. I've got 2 of them here. I'll be able to pack both of these cabbages into a 1-gallon crock. We're gonna weigh our cabbages. The first thing you got to do is know how much by weight of cabbage you have, because then what we're going to do is do some math. We're gonna find out how much these weigh, and we're going to add 2.5% salt. The last batch I did a 3% brine, and it's delicious, but I think I could back off on the salt just a little bit. So we're gonna weigh these up. If you don't have a kitchen scale, you need a kitchen scale. You always want to use kosher salt, pickling salt, or sea salt. You don't want to use iodized salt. There are a lot of folks who say that you ought to use dedicated pickling salt because its granules are small enough where it's able to dissolve. But I've used this sea salt. I've used pink Himalayan salt and Ferment, and it all seems to work for me. According to my calculations, we have 3,440 grams of cabbage, and so we need 2.5% of that. That comes to 86 grams. So I'm going to zero out my scale here, and we're going to get 86 grams of sea salt. There's 77. There we go. There, 88. All right, we're going to do a little bit more. 89 grams of sea salt there. This is all the salt we need for making sauerkraut. So now we just need to cut up our cabbage. Some people like to use a mandolin and slice their cabbage up into real thin strips. I like mine about a 1/2 inch. I like a little chunkier sauerkraut. So I just eyeball it with a knife and chop it into strips, take the core out and take off the outer leaves, and then put it all in a big old mixing bowl and sprinkle that salt in and really massage it. And we're going to do the massage 4 times. This is going to take about 2 to 3 hours to get all the liquid drawn out. Then we're going to pack it in our crock, stomp it down with a whatever you got. You can even use your fists, and our ferment will be underway. Dealing with any kind of fermentation, you want to keep your surfaces and your hands clean. So wash your hands frequently and wash your utensils, bowls, and everything. Make sure you get a fresh wash on that before you start putting things in there. When peeling your cabbage, it's a good practice to take some of the larger outer leaves, the more clean ones that aren't moldy, and wash them real well. And we're going to use these to help hold down our cabbage under the brine if we need them. Sometimes you don't. Last time I just had an open top and everything did fine, but these come in handy. So save a few of those. I need a longer knife. And then what we'll do is take this core out, this hard core, and we don't need that part. Put that in the compost pile. There's a nice big chunk of cabbage there. There's some density down there we might take out. Now here's another way you can core it. You can cut it into quarters and then just take that right out like so. I've seen some people actually cut around the core, so we'll try that one too. There you got a nice chunk of cabbage with no core in it. Just cut down at an angle And what you're left with when you're done is the core. All right, we've got our cabbage all nice and ready. Now comes the magic. Let's put the salt on. So you just take your salt, and remember we have a 2.5% by weight salt to cabbage. And so we're just going to sprinkle this in and massage it in, and that's the handy part. Wash your hands, keep your hands clean. I'll put in a little at a time and then turn it over. This is why you need a big mixing bowl. Put a little more salt in, make sure you get all the cabbage in contact with that salt. And you know, if you don't, it's no big deal, because in the end, a brine will form and everything will be in touch with that brine. But we want to make that brine and draw the moisture out. And you'll be surprised how much moisture there will be down in the bottom of this. Look. There's no moisture in there right now. In 2 hours, there's going to be a lot of it in there. And the volume of this cabbage will have reduced because the water is absorbed out of it. And that's how we'll be able to pack this into a 1 gallon crock. Right now, I don't think I could get it in there. You can hear it crunch like you're walking through gravel. I've heard folks in the north say it sounds like the sound of walking through snow in galoshes. Crunchy snow. I don't know about that, because we don't get much snow here. Messy. Cabbage everywhere. All right, let's put the rest of our salt in. You can already see it getting wet. Alright, so I'm going to leave this here for 30 minutes. I'll come back and do this again. Just work it with your hands. Get all the chunks separated. Get that salt really ground into there. There we go. You can already see the moisture just after a few minutes of massaging that. So what we'll do, we'll come back in 30 minutes, do this again. We'll do that for a total of 4 times, unless we see that it needs to go longer and you need to get more brine out of there. And then what we're going to do is mix in a little caraway seed. This gives it a nice kind of a nice flavor. I like the caraway seeds in there. If you don't like it, you don't have to do that. Some folks mix some other flavors into their sauerkraut, but you don't have to do that either. All right, so I'm going to use gloves now, just because I've moved out into the garage here because my family doesn't like the smell of this stuff. I do, but you know, you got to live with folks in peace. So it's been about 30 minutes. Actually, I think it's been about 45 minutes. And you can see there in the bottom, we're already getting moisture drawn out of this cabbage. And it's feeling like it's a little bit more wilty. So we're just going to massage it again and make sure we turn it around. And we'll do this another 3 or 4 times. And you can hear that sound, that cabbagey sound. Okay, we're almost there. You can see all that liquid brine down in there. Look at that. That's a lot of brine. It will continue to draw moisture out of this cabbage even after we pack it. And you can see that the volume has reduced by quite a bit. And you can see now how we can get all of that cabbage into a 1 gallon crock. So I'm going to massage it one more time. This is the second, actually this is the third massage. So we did the original one when we put the salt on. We came back a little while later and did a second one. And now this is the third one. It may not need a 4th massage. Okay guys, we're about ready to put the caraway seeds in here and mix it all up. Man, I wish one of you guys had told me my pocket was all messed up when I was doing video earlier, but of course you can't because it's a recording. But anyway, I fixed my pockets. So I'm going to take caraway seeds and I'm just going to sprinkle some in here. Caraway seed adds a nice flavor. I really like it. Wow, nice and aromatic like rye bread. And then we're going to do one final mix up and we're going to put it in our crock. I have a 1 gallon crock here. And this crock is a glassware crock that I use for ferment. And you can see that it has a lid that loosely sits on there, so it allows the air, the carbon dioxide, I think it's carbon dioxide, it It allows the gases to vent out like you would with an airlock for fermentation in a mason jar. But it also, the only reason you want a lid is to keep stuff from settling in on top of your ferment. This allows the gas to vent out and keep stuff out of it. But it's, yeah, I mean, how easy is that? So we're going to put this cabbage in our crock. Again, make sure everything is clean, make sure your hands are clean, and you can just get on into it. So you can see how this cabbage has really become wilty and pliable, and there's a whole lot. Let's see how much moisture we got. There's a whole lot of moisture down in there now. That's brine from the cabbage itself. There's no water added to this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pack this into our jar. And I like to put the jar in here just because it makes it a little cleaner. I'm not making a mess on my table. All right, sauerkraut. And while you're at it, taste it. You can eat sauerkraut at any time. I like mine to go about 2 weeks, and it retains its crunch, but at the same time it gets that fermented fizz taste, that sour that you like. All right, so let me show you what to do. Okay, this is a dedicated tool for people who ferment, and it's basically just a club, and we can go in here and really press this down. You want this to be compacted, packed in there. If you don't have one of these, you can use a wooden spoon, or you can use your fist and just get in there and pound this down until it's nice and compact. Because what we want is for all of this cabbage to be underneath the liquid as long as possible, as much as possible. And so I'm getting it down and pressing that cabbage in there. And I'm not sure if you can see, but the liquid, I'm down to the liquid level. Let me bring you in closer and take a look. Okay, so you can see when I press down on here, you can see the liquid is right there at the surface. Now, I'm gonna press this as flat as I can get it. And once it's all pressed in there, we're gonna pour the rest of our liquid in that's in our big bowl over here. All that brine is going right in here. So we want to top it off with all that brine. Don't waste any of that. There we go. That's it. Now we just let it sit. I like to write the date of my ferment beginning right here on the top. This says 4/4/20. That was my last batch that I fermented, so I'll just erase that. There's a Sharpie marker on glass. You can just wipe that off with a little vigorous rubbing. But I'm going to put today's date, 4/15/20. And in 2 weeks, this will be nice and wonderful sauerkraut. You can go longer than 2 weeks if you like a softer kraut with a little more fizz to it, but I really like a little crunch. So I'm going to go 2 weeks, and I'm going to put this out in my garage. Right now, my garage heats up in the afternoon. It gets up in the 90s, and that's a little hot for fermentation, but I haven't noticed it really hampering things. I got to keep it out there because my family can't tolerate the smell of it in my house. So yeah, if you've got a place to put it, fermentation goes well anywhere between 70 and 80 degrees. If it gets a little hotter, that's okay. And I'm going to keep direct sunlight off of this by putting a towel over this. You want to ferment inside of a container like this bowl, because what's going to happen is all the gases are going to build up. We packed in all that cabbage in there so tightly that as it gives off gases, that cabbage is going to lift up in here, and it's going to come almost to the top, and sometimes it may overflow. So what you want to do is come out every day, open your lid, and use your tamper or whatever it is, and press your cabbage back down under the liquid. Now, what you might also notice, every now and then you might see some white stuff on the top, some foam or some yeast looking stuff. That's just yeast or mold on the top. You can just scrape that off and discard it, and that's fine. Everything underneath is just fine. And it's not, it's not going to hurt you, but you'll know if your ferment has not gone well. It will really stink bad. It will be unedible. But if you open this up and you get that wonderful smell, oh man, there's nothing better than a good ferment. So we've made cabbage. We've made sauerkraut. Look at that. That's what it looks like when we're done. So you can see some of the cabbage is not beneath the brine. That's okay. Just come every day and tamp it down, and make sure you rotate. As you tamp it down, what you'll be doing is pressing this under the brine and bathing those cabbages in the brine. And that's all you need to do. So here's what we get in the end. Nice, juicy, crispy sauerkraut. I know you can't really see that very well. My exposure thing's going crazy. Nice and tangy. I'll put it in a mason jar. I'll put the lid on, but not secure it real tight because the fermentation will continue, though. When you put it in the fridge, it slows down a lot. But it will continue on. You don't want your jars bursting. So let your cap be on there lightly so that it can vent out some of those gases. This will keep almost indefinitely. I have eaten fermented foods 2 years after I've fermented them with no trouble whatsoever, and this is good stuff right here. This is what it looks like when it's done. 2 weeks and you'll be into some good sauerkraut. Today is the day. We've got 12-day-old sauerkraut here. It's been in here fermenting for 12 days. It's time to stop that ferment now and place it in jars and put it in the refrigerator. So I'm going to begin that now. This was, I believe, about 14 pounds of cabbage, 2 heads of Brunswick and Gloria Weinhausen. A true ferment is so different than what you might buy at the store in cans or in vinegar pickled stuff. That's not real sauerkraut. A true ferment, if you've never had fermented food, it's really so much better than pickling with vinegar. It's so much better for you. There's probiotics in here. This is a living food. I'll tell you, if you ever go out and you work in your yard, you find yourself cramping up because you've lost a lot of electrolytes from sweat loss, a little bit of brine here will help you a lot. So take your fermented food when you're ready and you like it, and just refrigerate it, and that will cease the fermentation process, or at least slow it down significantly, and put it in your fridge. I got this right by my fermented radishes, sauerkraut. Yeah, man, that's good. That makes me happy. I have made sauerkraut. Look at this. Delicious, crunchy. If you've never had sauerkraut made in the traditional way, fermented, not vinegar and cabbage. If you've never had a fermented sauerkraut, you're really missing out. This took me 12 days, and I have made a ferment in 12 days. You can go up to 20 days, 24 days. Some people go 6 weeks with this stuff. But I like a little crunch to it, so 12 days was all it took. It's got that nice fermented bite to it, that fizz to it. It is crunchy. I like it crunchy. If you like it soft, let it go longer. But this will keep in the refrigerator for virtually indefinitely. Certainly it will keep long enough before long enough for me to eat all of it. And the health benefits are just outstanding. It's a good probiotic. Any kind of fermented food is good for you, but fermented cabbage, sauerkraut with caraway seeds, man, it's hard to beat this stuff. I'm so happy. Okay, so we made sauerkraut. Man, that stuff is so delicious. When you've had a fermented food, that vinegar pickling process they use at the store and in the big pickles and the big sauerkraut makers that just pour vinegar on stuff and let it cure in there. That's no good, man. When you've had fermented food, man, that'll make you live to 150. It's good stuff. So thank you for joining us on Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. That's how we extend our garden and preserve our food and make it even better. Please follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, and we'll talk to you next time. Have good gardening, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.